By now, you've probably seen the headlines regarding the recent settlement by the National Association of Realtors. In this video, we're gonna break down what this might mean to you as a consumer. But before we jump into that, make sure you hit subscribe below to stay on top of all the latest Huntsville, Alabama real estate news. First, it's important to point out that this is not fully approved yet. However, it's very unlikely that a judge will not approve a settlement. When you have a lawsuit, you have two parties that aren't happy with each other. And when they come together and have this meeting of the minds where they agree to this settlement and they no longer have that disagreement, most judges will approve that settlement. However, you do have the outside chance of the DOJ or some other interested party interjecting and basically creating an issue around the settlement. That's still really unlikely because the plaintiff attorneys that were selected for this case, this is not their first rodeo, and they have a lot of experience working with the DOJ, and it's very, very likely that they've had conversations if they're doing their due diligence prior to releasing the settlement. So again, very unlikely that this settlement does not get approved how it is written today. So you might be asking, what is a settlement? Well, you have until May 9th, 2025 to submit your claim, and you can find out more information on that on their website at realestateCommissionLitigation.com. The details of that settlement, basically $418 million is what the National Association of Realtors settled for. There's also other settlements by some of the major franchise brokers across the nations as well. So if you do the math on that, so before you get too excited, if you sold a home in the last few years and you're looking for a big settlement from this lawsuit, $418 million, likely 30% or so, about $100 million going to the plaintiff attorneys, you're looking at about $300 million. And over that period, you're looking at about 5 million homes sold a year, times 5, that's 25 million homes. So $300 million divided by 25 million homes sold, you're only looking at about a $12 settlement each based on that math. So if you're expecting a big settlement, unfortunately, probably not gonna get it in that. This is unfortunately, in these type of lawsuits, the people that really win are the attorneys, and they won big with about $100 million worth of fees. So you might be wondering, as a potential buyer or a seller now in this market, how does this settlement affect you? Well, of course, the headlines have been buyer agency compensation is going away, the end of 6% commissions, and the national media has really gotten that story wrong, and it's kind of a little bit of a clickbait type article to get more eyeballs on their news platforms. The reality is that the commission or the compensation field in the MLS is going away. So not necessarily the buyer agency compensation, but the field within the MLS is going to be going away. And here's where it's likely going to be listed. So not in the MLS, probably on brokers' websites is gonna be probably the biggest place where it's gonna be. Now, it's not gonna be on Zillow or any other similar site like that, like Realtor.com or Homes.com. And that's because the rules within this settlement state that any site that receives data from the MLS cannot host these broker compensations. So again, you'll see likely the brokers' websites on their own listings. And then also you might see a third-party platform populate where agents are able to populate buyer concessions that sellers are paying towards buyers' agents. So expect to see that, and then again, expect to be able to find this data on brokers' websites. So again, the headlines of buyer agency compensation or the 6% commissions going away, that is very unlikely. The work of a buyer agent is just too valuable to both serving the buyers and then also bringing those buyers to sellers. And so it's very likely that most sellers will still agree to pay a buyer concession to help get their home sold and help pay for buyers' closing costs, whether that be buyer agency commission or also some of their closing costs to help them afford to purchase that home and ultimately get the seller's home sold for the most money possible in this market. With this, how am I so sure that buyer compensation is still going to be around? Well, again, there's so much value that's offered by the buyer's agents. There was an experiment that was done by the Northwest MLS where they gave the ability to sellers to be able to offer compensation of $0 or any amount that they wanted to. And with that, 98.7% of sellers still offer compensation because of the value that it offers in terms of helping them get the most money for the sale of their home. Now, buyer compensation rules, again, they're moving outside the MLS, but the rules are staying the same. Buyer agents can be compensated via a percentage of the sale of the home, a flat dollar amount, or also even a bonus as well. Another change that came about from this settlement is that buyer agreements are now necessary to view a home with a real estate agent. I think this is a great opportunity for buyers and consumers to interview your buyer's agent and then also help them provide a buyer's consultation. I'm a huge proponent of buyer's consultations. Ever since I started selling homes, that has been one of my favorite parts of the process, working with either a first-time home buyer or even a repeat buyer and educating them on the process and what has potentially changed since the last time they purchased, or educating them on the process on what it looks like on buying their first home. So again, a huge value add that we offer at Matt Kirsch Real Estate to our consumers. So this buyer consultation to explain the process, and then also go over the services that an agent provides. So this gives you an opportunity. A lot of sellers interview listing agents to decide which agent they want to go with. Now, a buyer's agent might want to do that as well. They might want to interview on the front end which agent that they want to go with by asking them to do a buyer consultation. So I think this is a valuable benefit of this settlement for consumers. So great opportunity for buyers to get educated on the front end of the process. And here at Matt Kirsch Real Estate, we're going to have a lot of consumer-friendly options for our buyers to be able to work with these buyer agents on their first showings. And we're going to really make that process easy and educational for our clients. So you might be wondering, how does this affect housing affordability? There's been headlines that housing prices might drop as a result of this. In reality, commission does not affect the pricing of the home. And so do not expect for any price drops as a result of this. And this is an election year, so housing is going to be a big political issue with a decrease in housing affordability, not only here in North Alabama, but really across the US. So you're gonna read some really misleading statements. I saw one the other day from President Biden about how this is going to save buyers money. Well, it's very unlikely that housing prices are going to drop as a result of this. The only thing that it could do is potentially cost buyers money if they were to have to pay a portion of their own commission. So very unlikely to save buyers money, and it's not going to lead to a drop in prices. Really, the reason we have less housing affordability is because of inflation. And it's really all the money printing that we've done. There's two ways to tax us as US citizens. Number one is just to tax us, and we all know what those taxes are, the federal and state taxes that we have each and every year. The other hidden tax is when the government wants to do a new program, yet they don't want to bring it up for vote. And basically to see if we're willing to raise our taxes to be able to pay for that program or even a war. And so what do? They have deficit spending, and they spend more money than we bring in. And that has been the result of increased inflation, not only for housing prices, but really on everything. But what do politicians do? They try to pass the buck onto somebody else. And that's exactly what you're seeing with this on housing affordability. Housing affordability is down because of the overall inflation that we have, unfortunately, in the US. Expect to see higher prices this spring and summer with increased demand. And if you're considering selling your home this year, be on the lookout for my next video on both the pros and the cons of offering a buyer concession.